Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I begin in the name of the God whose mercy is profound, whose kindness is forever. I guess I've already answered the question. Does God exist? Well, I'm already talking about it. The discussion on existence of God can take different forms. Take it as an apology from me. What I'm presenting is my understanding of the truth about God's existence as I have understood it from the Quran. No one else should be blamed for weaknesses in what I'm saying. If there is any merit in my presentation, it's because of God's kindness and my teacher's remarkable influence on me. Weaknesses remain in it because despite these factors, I still remain a very ordinary person. Some of the people who may not, for some reasons, be particularly impressed by a religious presentation on the subject, be rest assured, when I talk about religion, I'm talking about an understanding which is open to debate. You can ask questions, you can make objections and be critical. When we make a claim that we have an understanding which is meant for everybody, we are not making a claim wherein we are thrusting the understanding upon others, forcing it down their throats. It's an understanding which needs to be considered like indeed all other competitive understandings deserve to be considered. And it's only through decent, refined, academic exchange of views that people can come to their respective conclusions. And nobody has any right to blame anyone for having his or her own understanding. And of course, I don't want you to blame me as well. Now, there are two positions about the question. God exists, He doesn't exist. One is called theism and the other atheism. What I'm claiming is that belief in God is natural. It has to be somebody who created us. It has to be somebody who's running the show. Some people don't believe in Him either because the correct message hasn't been conveyed to them properly, or they don't want to believe in Him. Well, ignore the second part. I don't want anybody to fall in that category. It's easy to blame, but I'm just mentioning it to complete the statement. When I approach others, I have to assume that people want to know. It's not that they don't want to know, but there are good reasons which are impeding the process of them in understanding. Many intelligent people took the absence of a convincing presentation as an evidence of the fact that God didn't exist. I do admit that the presentation has been, in many cases, weak, if not poor. If the problems intriguing the honest but inquisitive mind are properly addressed, belief in God would emerge naturally and strongly, and let me add, in most cases gradually. However, no amount of evidence can convince the individual who doesn't want to accept it. I mean this is true for everyone. This is true for every point of view. If you have come prepared with a firm understanding, commitment, that I'm not going to give in, then nothing can happen. And of course, you can blame me for not accepting your point of view, likewise, for the same reasons. So it really is an objective, open exchange of views that I believe normally leads a well-meaning, good individual to come to the understanding that, after all, there indeed is a God. Now, in order for me to be able to give my point of view, it's important that I must understand as objectively as possible the other point of view. So I'll first mention the position of atheists. And maybe it's sketchy, but I'm trying to just briefly mention what their understanding is. This world came about as an accidental consequence of a Big Bang which triggered a process of evolution. Spanning over a vast expanse of time, it culminated in human life. In the beginning, man, because he was primitive, because he was not quite as cultured, as fully intellectually trained, he believed in many gods to get a feeling of security. There were threats to his life. He was vulnerable. There were so many natural calamities that he was facing. So he had to have a sense of security, and for that reason he created gods in his imagination. As humans learnt more, so goes the argument. Those many gods were gradually reduced to one God. Man started realizing that we don't need many, and let's start understanding that it's all emerging from one. However, with the advancement of human knowledge, man doesn't need him either, as all natural phenomena traditionally attributed to God can now be clarified, clearly explained through scientific explanation of cause and effect relationship. So, not long ago, if you were asked the question, who created the sun? You would say God. Who created the moon? You would say God. Who causes rain to fall? You would say God. Who causes night to fall, day to appear? God, God, God. Well, now, there's no need for it. We already know that everything that is happening because we are able to see clearly behind each natural phenomenon, each event, a series of happenings. There are causes which are leading to an effect, a result. So now we know quite clearly that it's not a very intelligent thing to say. So goes the argument that rain falls because God causes it to fall, because we already know that there is a certain process that gets followed, and when that process is followed, the ultimate consequence of it is that rain falls. So when we are now know that there is condensation, cloud formation, and then rainfall ultimately results as a consequence of many different phenomena coming together, you don't need to have an additional understanding which doesn't fit into it of God to claim that He is there. So the atheists, the mention of the special creation, according to them, of Adam and Eve in religious scriptures, and the erroneous placement of them a few thousand years early, is an evidence that the story of religion is a fiction. There was a time when the story of man had to be justified, and it was justified through the characters of Adam and Eve, who came not very long ago, some 6,000, 8,000 years ago. Now that we know, through the discovery of the scientific process of identifying ages, humans came to this world 200,000 or 250,000 years ago, whereas religious scriptures make us believe that the first human came to this world no more than 6,000 years ago. Therefore, facts don't match. The religious description doesn't match with the scientific understanding. So why should we bother to be burdened by that understanding anymore? Moreover, the practical guidance, and that moreover is important, practical guidance provided in religious scriptures for man is not workable in the modern times anymore. I mean, okay, there was a time when you could flog a criminal, you could kill a killer, you could subject people to punishments and discipline them. Now we've moved forward. We know that humans are far more disciplined, decent, because of the way they have been trained. We have traveled quite a bit, and therefore, as a consequence of what we as humans have achieved, there's no need to have a primitive restrictive idea of religion, whether it be faith or its expectations in practical life, to be applicable anymore. Let's not bother about it. The conduct of many religious people is also another reason why people are drawn away. They say that because God is at the very center of the whole idea of religion, and religion is causing huge problems in this modern world. Religious instructions don't make sense. They're very restrictive. So let's do away with this wonderful idea. Wonderful in the sense that it did quite a bit for human betterment long time ago. But now that we know that it's no more needed, what's the point in continuing with it? That's the kind of understanding which well-meaning atheists do have. Of course, the details of arguments are much more, and I'm sure that they are far more academically profound than what I have very casually presented in this small passage. However, taking that as a target or objective or an understanding that needs to be understood and addressed, I'm now presenting a counter-narrative, the position of Islam. What I understand is that the Big Bang and evolution theories could be correct, but not without God, but with a direct involvement of Him. This world, including man, certainly came about through a process of evolution. That's not my subject of discussion this afternoon. Otherwise, I would have presented the meaning of verses of the Quran that clearly mention that the Almighty created man, requiring him to go through a gradual process of evolution drawn out over a long period of time. So the conventional story that people hear from some religious people is not necessarily representative of the entire religious world, not certainly of Islam. However, the first human couple who came to this world believed in one God, not many. Through divine guidance, they believed in Him because of love, not because of fear. Fear is a consequence of love which must precede fear. The idea of people who reject religion is that man needed religion because he feared for his life, for his existence. What we understand from the Quran is that the first humans who came to this world were believers in one God, and they believed in Him because of the guidance that they got from the Almighty Himself, and also because of the fact that they loved Him. They loved Him because the life that was given to them was beautiful. They enjoyed every bit of it, and they wanted to thank God. You fear because you love something. Fear occurs only when you are scared that what you love is what you would lose. Otherwise, there's no point in fearing. I mean, why would you fear? What will you fear if what you have you don't like it? I mean, if my existence is a burden on me and you come and kill me, I'll say thank you very much. So very kind of you. I was waiting for somebody. But if I love my life, then most certainly I would fear of losing it. And if I love my life, I'll thank the one who has given it to me. So religious sentiment emerges from the sentiment, the emotions of love that we humans have in us. Fear is only a consequence of it. The subsequent emergence of false belief in many gods was an aberration which humans fell into because they had weaknesses in them and because they were made free agents. Because humans are free to choose whatever they want to. Because God has not forced the right understanding, the right faith down the throats of humans. Why? Because this life is to be a trial. Because He is looking at the performance of people, individuals, which they are undertaking without any external coercion. That is why it is up to you as an individual whether you choose to go one way or the other, despite knowing from inside that certain things are good and certain others are undesirable. And of course we have weaknesses and we fall into the trap of those weaknesses, but that's what this life is all about. They were made free agents because this life was designed to be a trial. So the position of Islam is that it is wrong to believe that scientific explanation of cause and effect relationship in natural phenomena has precluded the need for God. While these scientific explanations are answers to the question how, God is the answer to the question who. You see, if you explain rainfall, you are explaining how rain comes about. What are the different steps? What are the different processes that are followed for rain to ultimately happen? But how do you preclude God from there? I mean, it is as if that I raise my arm and hand, and somebody tells you that, this is happening because of certain steps that are taking place inside the body of this man. Don't believe him if he says that I'm doing it myself. He'll fool you. Actually, it's a scientific process starting from his brain and some orders emerging from there that is causing his arm to be raised. Of course, it's not going to be a very convincing, brilliant idea. You would say that, well, look here, sir, you are brilliant. You know science more than me. But I'm telling you that what you're saying is the answer to one question, which is I'm not even asking. My problem is not what are the details of how I'm raising my arms. My problem is I'm doing it. My question is not as an ordinary person as to how rain falls. What are the details of this phenomenon? My problem is who is doing it. You know why? Because I want to thank him. Because rainfall is brilliant. Because it helps in enabling me to survive. Because it has caused my food to sprout. Vegetables, crops, fruits that I need so badly. They are caused to emerge from the soil because rain falls from the sky and then sun shines. I don't want to know how it does, how it happens. What I want to know most certainly is who is doing it. So the two do not conflict with each other. They're not mutually exclusive concepts. So I'm sure that this process of describing in detail how this is happening is brilliant, but it does in no way does it preclude the presence of God. It is God who is causing rain to fall the way it does, the process of which has been more precisely discovered and described by science. God and scientific explanation aren't mutually exclusive. Another question that I want to address is, why isn't God clear enough? I mean, had he decided to be visible, had he chosen to be so very clear as hopefully my voice is, there wouldn't have been two opinions. There wouldn't have been a dispute. He has chosen to be a little bit of unclear. He's invisible, obscure. Why did he do it? What I'm trying to say is that realities are of two types. That which is visible clearly and that which isn't. Whether it's the one or the other depends on the nature of the reality. To demand a visible view of intellect quite the same way as one views the bright shining sun wouldn't be a sane idea. It isn't that intellect is not a reality because it can't be seen. It's in the nature of intellect that unlike the sun, it isn't visible. Intellect has to be inferred from what it does. And the inference isn't vague. Once clear, it's as clear a reality as the sun. And I tell you, this is not an unscientific statement that I'm making. Gravity, for example, is a reality discovered, understood, believed in, taught, disseminated by science. You can't see it, you can't hear it, you can't touch it. You infer the existence of reality as a consequence of the events that take place before you, which cannot be explained, except through the understanding that there has to be something that causes objects to be attracted towards this earth. So there are realities which are as real as the shining sun, but it's in their nature that they are not quite as visible as the sun. The Quran tells us, so that's one area which is to really be taken into account while we are talking about God. Now I'm presenting what are the other positive arguments. Let me just briefly say that the Quran tells us that belief in God is natural because man has come to this world not empty about the idea. He was already informed. The memory of the information was removed, but the effect of it was allowed to remain. Like in the case of morality, morality was taught to us before we were sent to this world. We do not remember the lecture, we don't remember the events, but the effect of the lecture is imprinted inside our soul. That is why a vast majority of humans have always been believing in a God, because they came to this world with an understanding already given to them. Then we have also been told that the very first couple who got the opportunity of experiencing life here got the opportunity of experiencing God. I'm not too sure they saw him, but they did something which can actually be described as communicating with him directly. God talked to Adam, God talked to his wife, and there were certain events that took place. How could it be imagined that when they had children, they wouldn't have talked to them about it? I'm sure they had hardly any other topic to talk about. I mean, now we have so many things to talk about. But imagine a couple having had a wonderful experience of direct communication with God and not talking to their children about it. And how could it be possible that those children didn't talk to their children about it? And that's how the idea of God, apart from what is already there inside us, it continued to stay in human civilization in each and every society, and God continued to remain a household understanding concept and word which was taken as real. However, that doesn't really mean that our intellect cannot be convinced about it. As I said, if you go by the inference of what is happening, you would know more and more, and I think it really is something which can be talked about in far more detail. But just to briefly mention, I've given a quote. The Quran tells us that when Pharaoh asked Moses, "Who's your God?" he answered, "The one who gave everything its existence and then guided it." What it means is that things don't just exist in this world. It's not just you have physical presence of certain objects. They have a purpose to achieve, and they have been taught that purpose as well. Okay, let's assume for the sake of argument that the bee got created accidentally through the combined effect of the Big Bang and the process of evolution. But how did it learn to suck nectar from flowers to make honey? The bee has a role. The role has to be performed, and the role was there inside it, the tiny creature, and it does the job. Likewise man, likewise animals, likewise stars, everything. So that there is an existence, but it's not just about physical presence of existence. The objects, apart from their material existence, also have purposes to serve, and those purposes are also built in, and they do continue to to pursue them, and that is what God is doing. The amazing existence of this world with humans getting served with solutions to their needs is in extraordinary ways is an evidence that it isn't a fluke happening. He is the sustainer. I was not just created and allowed to worry for my own needs and be at the mercy of the vagaries of nature. I was provided with responses to the needs that I had, and therefore there is a presence of somebody who sustains. You know, I mean, how far can we go in explaining everything by saying it was a fluke, another chance? Yes, another chance. Yes, it was another accident. I mean, I feel thirsty, and I'm telling you, I do at the moment. And lo, my friend brings water, not because he's created it, but because God has arranged for it. Before that, I need air to breathe. I would collapse if it's not there. Lo and behold, it's there. Absolutely apt in the right form. I need food. And look at the diversity of food that is available. So, you know, it's not that you just come about, you've been thrown into existence through some different chain of events. It's that you're there and you have needs, and then your needs are being met. So not a very unintelligent idea to say that it's our sustainer who's doing it. The extraordinary way a human child survives infancy despite her vulnerability because of compassion of her parents and others is an indication of his subtle wisdom. Do you get the point? You came to this world and you were very feeble and vulnerable. You wouldn't have survived. I don't know of any other newborn baby apart from the human baby who is so vulnerable. And you know, for the first few years of our existence, we cannot survive on our own. And even before we come to this world, there is as if a red carpet welcome awaiting us, our parents, our relatives, and all the troubles that we put them into are endured with smiles, you know, without any problems. What is going on? Is it just again a fluke? The egg of the hen needs 21 days of cozy environment. And it's just about those 21 days for which the hen gets from inside an indication, as if a button is pushed on, that she is not interested in anything except providing that cozy environment to the egg so that ultimately after 21 days it gets hatched. What's going on? Is it a fluke? No. There is a relationship. On its own? No. Has to be somebody who's doing it. So you see, you look at this world, the way it's operating carefully, you will find reasons after reasons to believe that there is wisdom, there is sustenance. The amazing experience of life causes people to pray to God, as a result of which their understanding of God gets further confirmed when He responds to his prayers. You might say that, look here, this is your personal matter, I don't agree with you. You know, religious people keep telling us about things which we don't experience. But okay, you know, just for the sake of understanding, I'm asking you, so what would you tell me if you think that understanding and believing in God is not a very intelligent idea? What would you tell me, who knows from inside that I have actually asked my God for help in situations when I was really vulnerable and no possible way out was there in the offing, and it just came? Should I say that it was another fluke, like the Big Bang and the evolution? But it can't be. I know. Okay, I take your point that you didn't get it, and well, we can talk more about it. But please don't blame me for believing in Him, about whom I know from inside that I talk to Him, not directly, but through my prayers. And honestly, I've already seen some amazing things happening in my life which couldn't have happened save there was somebody who responded. And for me, that is not the only reason. Don't get me wrong. That's not the only reason. That's the icing on the cake. That's the confirmation. That is as if the issue has been clinched as far as I am concerned. Everything else in place, and this one comes as well as a further confirmation. Well, it's a difficult question to answer, but let me say that, I don't know, I keep asking my friends, atheist friends, have you actually tried? Did you really give it a try? Were you ever so very desperate and vulnerable that you thought that there is nothing that can come to your rescue? And you said to yourself that, okay, there is said to be a God who is in complete command of everything. And let me from deep inside say to him, oh God, please help me. Oh, please come to your rescue. And if you tell that you did it, and it didn't happen, well, I'll say, okay, I can't blame you, honestly, but I'm surprised. Why did it happen to me? And why does it not happen to you? So, I don't know. I'm not answering the question honestly. If people say that it doesn't happen to them, I'm a worried person and I'll keep thinking about it, but I'll try to help the person. But I can tell you that I don't want to know myself as an idiot. I don't want to believe in something which is not there. I don't want to fool myself by saying that I'm believing in something who is not there. I'm telling you that I'm talking about experiences which really are extraordinary. And I'm not saying that I'm a very noble man. I can tell you that these experiences are shared by many others. And I'm telling you that they're not talking nonsense. They're actually talking about real things happening. If God's there, why is it that the truth and justice isn't prevailing? Well, that's a good question. But the good answer to it is that you cannot have a proper understanding about God. It is impossible unless you know God's full scheme, which is that this worldly life is a life of trial, and there's going to be another life which is going to be the life of accountability and consequent reward and punishment. This life is a life of trial, therefore people have been allowed to remain free agents to do whatever they want to choose. And if people continue to do things wrong knowingly, intentionally, then there is another life waiting for them when they're going to be held accountable for what they're doing and ultimately are going to be punished. So God is in no hurry. He wants only one thing to happen in this life, that the examination is conducted in a manner that people go through the examination and give their conduct in a way that the next life would take care of the problems, if any, if they confront it, and be rewarded for the good things they did. What is the fault of those who were introduced to an incorrect concept of God? If you followed my presentation, one part of the answer is that the person who didn't get the right concept had reasons to feel that the concept was not right, because he had an understanding before that inside. And we all have it. I mean, if, God forbid, my parents tell lies, it's not that I'll start believing that lying and cheating is brilliant, How brilliant is my father? How cleverly he's telling lies. No, it's not that. Honestly, despite the fact that I love him, I would still abhor the idea that he's telling lies. Why? Because I know from inside that lying is bad. Likewise, it's not that if somebody tells you, even if your parents, that this is what the concept of God is, that you are completely empty inside yourself and quote, you've got no understanding whatsoever, that would cause you to believe in what they're saying. However, having said that, the book that I believe in to be Book of God tells us that God is fair. On the day of judgment, He is going to allow everyone the opportunity to explain his, her position, and He is not going to hold anyone responsible for anything beyond his potential, his, her potential. Honest to God, this is a brilliant concept that I've got from the Quran. Verse 42, Surah 7. Indeed, those who believe and do good deeds, we shall not hold anyone responsible for more than his potential. Such are the residents of the paradise. They shall dwell therein forever. Can there be a more fair statement than that? So if somebody was misinformed and he or she didn't have any good reasons to believe that what information was passed on to him, her, was wrong, faulty, erroneous, then he, she has an excuse. God would know whether the excuse is acceptable or not. And it is on the basis of God's judgment that the ultimate decision is going to be taken. What should someone whose prayers aren't heard do? I think I've already answered. Pray again. If they are not heard, pray again. Keep doing it. Believing that there are some other people who say that they are heard. And ask yourself, be self-critical. Ask yourself, are you doing it genuinely? And I tell you honestly, something is going to happen. Let me just summarize before I face you. God is the most obvious reality. However, he isn't visible or scientifically provable as many of the other realities are, because it is in the nature of the reality of his existence that he shouldn't be discoverable that way. He is clearly visible in every aspect of our life, but in order for one to see him, one needs willingness. That willingness comes from a strong yearning to thank the one who has created us and this life. If that yearning is there, God reveals himself gradually, but clearly. If it's not there, no matter how intelligent a person, his presence can be challenged by asking questions that create doubt about the possibility of his existence. It is correct to say that belief in God is not quite as much an intellectual issue as it is a moral one. You know, had it been an intellectual issue, then of course all unintelligent people like me would have gone astray, and all brilliant people would have believed. God has arranged it in such an intelligent, wise way that it has to do with intellect. You have to exert as best as you can intellectually, but it's not vitally linked with intellect quite as much as with morality. Its intellectual aspect is subordinate to its moral aspect. You might say, why moral? Why moral? Well, I tell you, okay, let me give you an example. Don't say that it's a bad example, I mean, just an example. A person comes to learn about the fact that his father, he knows that he's alive, but he doesn't know where he is. He is living in Malaysia. Somebody tells him that, you know, your father is actually living in Pakistan, and there is some evidence that he's there. And the young man says, yeah, I'm not interested. Forget about it. Let me carry on with life. I think this is morally condemnable. What do you mean? What do you mean? You're not interested in your father? I mean, come on. He is the one who cared for you when you were young. Okay, it's not completely certain. There is a possibility that he's there, but there is a possibility that he's not there. How on earth can you say that, okay, he's there, but I'm not interested? That's not possible. So what I'm saying is that it's a moral issue. Have you given it the attempt that it deserves, earnestly, without entertaining any prejudices, biases, and you fail? Well, I will say that honestly, I can't blame you then. But have you done it? Is a question that you can answer yourself only. Atheists point to the fact that when everything can be explained without God, what is the need of him? God was needed when people feared the threats of natural calamities and couldn't explain natural phenomena. Now, thanks to science, and man has been able to remove his material and intellectual limitations. He therefore doesn't need God anymore. Moreover, the religious narrative about man is so inaccurate that there is no need to give any significance to the hackneyed concepts emanating from religion anymore. The Quran tells us that belief in God is natural. Man resorted to it right from the first day he set his foot on this world to thank his creator and sustainer. Asking him for help in fear was only a secondary reason to approach him. By explaining the process of natural phenomena, one doesn't rule out God's presence. While God is the answer to the question who, scientific explanations are answers to the question how. Man is neither 6,000 years old nor has he emerged suddenly. That is what the Quran says. Given that Quranic understanding, the latest and the fully preserved version of God's guidance doesn't mention anything that can be criticized from a scientific point of view. There is no need to doubt God's existence. Moreover, when man seeks God's attention, he gets such responses which which convert his predominant feeling of his presence into certainty.
My question is it appropriate to use the word God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we know 99 names of Allah ta'ala, and we have been many times with viral messages that we should not use the word God or Allah ta'ala.
Thank you. The Quran says, قُلِ ادْعُوا اللَّهَ أَوِ ادْعُوا الرَّحْمَنَ أَيَّمَّا تَدْعُوهُ فَلَهُ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى. Call him by the name Allah or call him by the name Rahman. By whatever name you call him, doesn't matter. He has all the good names, all the good attributes. The word Allah was used by the polytheist Arabs even before the revelation of the Quran as the word referring to the one who created and the one who is sustaining. And the Quran mentions that. وَلَئِن سَأَلْتَهُمْ مَنْ خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. If you ask them who created the heaven and the earth, لَيَقُولُنَّ اللَّهِ, they would say Allah. Before the Quran, we believe that there were other scriptures from God that were already also revealed, and none of them was in Arabic, and most certainly none of them used Allah for God, Jehovah, Yahweh, or whatever other expression was used, but not Allah. So I think my friends, brothers and sisters who are disseminating this message are well-meaning, but I don't agree with them. And I use God more than Allah when I am speaking to people who know English, and more particularly those who are non-Muslims, because I want God's message to be put across in a way that there aren't any barriers, psychological obstacles. When you use a word which is strange for them, which is not a part of their language, when they are informed about that word, all of a sudden the barrier, restriction is erected for them to be able to properly and openly understand the message. Why should I do it? I mean, if God has actually bound me to use no other name for him except Allah, then it would have been a different matter. But I've mentioned before you the verse. God says it doesn't matter. Use this name or that name. And I have given you the evidence that most certainly this word was not used for the creator, the sustainer, God, before the revelation of the Quran. So what are you saying?
Accepting all those views which you have mentioned for the reasons of the existence of God, assuming that there is an existence of God, one God there, why do I need a God? While on the same hand my atheist friend is enjoying the same life and the same benefits of the life with me, and I need a God, but he don't need a God.
There are two reasons. Both I mentioned, but probably not quite as clearly. One is that if it's just a mere intellectual issue, then of course, I mean, I like cricket, you like football, I like Manchester United, you like Liverpool. It's a matter of choice. But if it is a moral problem, if my father is there in Pakistan and I am not taking interest, then I am not a good son. I'm immoral. If God is there, then it's important that he needs to be looked at, to be looked for, to be searched for, desperately. And I'm sure if some atheist friends are convinced that he's not there, they should help us in coming out of this unnecessary understanding. So God is a moral issue. That is why you simply cannot remain neutral, one. And number two, all moral issues are the ones about whom we are all going to be held accountable. So if somebody is having a nice life without God, he's having it because God has chosen it to be so. God has chosen this life to be designed in a way that even if somebody doesn't believe in God, even if he reviles God and his messengers, he would not necessarily be taken to task in this life, because this life has to be protected as a life of trial. But if there is a reason to believe that there is a life hereafter, where we're going to be held accountable for our moral performance, then not believing in him for one reason or the other has to be an important question that the person will have to answer when he'll be standing right in front of his Creator, all by himself, without anybody to support.
My name is Bukhari. Actually, I have two questions. I have belief in my God, but there's two questions that first is, give me some example that is there any hell being a practical, and is there any heaven that we believe in that there is a heaven, but in terms of practical life, is there any practical example that heaven is exists and or hell is exists? And another question is that you have showed us some examples of Adam and Eve, but scientific theory is that man is evolution of a monkey. That how it could be possible? So can you define it?
Okay. Hussain, I will answer your second question first, simply because I remember it more clearly. And if I have answered it, then you will help me in getting reminded as to what the first question was, because that is something I've already forgotten. I gave an indirect reference in my presentation about the fact that the Quran gives us a reason to believe that man didn't come about all of a sudden. Man was arranged by God to evolve over a period of time, going through a long drawn out process, and then ultimately the couple was chosen who were designed and decided to be the first humans on earth. I hope you agree that Quran is not a book of science, but it's a book of guidance. But it does actually make some remarkable mentions. At times we do not notice them because we read the Quran from the color of our glasses. So, we have our own understanding and we are influenced. But imagine, and I'm not giving you a very clear answer, but I'm just giving you some evidences here and there for you also to reflect and ponder, and of course it's a project for everybody to get into. It's not any one person or a few people's undertaking. The Quran says, for example, in Surah Nuh, 71st Surah, verse 17, God Almighty, mentioning His blessings to humanity, says, Wallahu ambatakum minal ardi nabata. God caused you, humans, to sprout from the soil the way crops sprout. My goodness, what does it mean? I don't know. But it's brilliant. It is giving you an understanding that the simple story, allow me to say the very naive story, is not completely correct. There is more to it than what many people actually are talking. Likewise, in Surah An-Najm, which is the 53rd Surah, I'm no Zakir Naik, so I don't clearly remember the verse number, but the verse says, likewise, Huwa ansha'akum minal ard. He raised you from the soil. Raised you from the soil. These two verses are actually giving a reason for us to believe that preceding the creation of man, the birth of man, there was a long period which had different stages, phases, and the details of which, well, God doesn't mention. Well, He wants you to also investigate, but He just gives you indication. And there's another third remarkable passage. I'm not just saying that there are only three passages. Third remarkable passage in Surah As-Sajda, which is the 32nd surah. I guess it's verses 7 to 9, wherein the Almighty says that Allazi ahsana kulla shay'in khalaqa. He is the one who, whatever He created beautifully. فَبَدَا خَلْقَ الْإِنسَانِ مِنْ طِينٍ. And He initiated the process of creation of man with dust, with soil. Then He carried it forward. ثُمَّ جَعَلَ نَسْلَهُ مِنْ سُلَالَةٍ مِّن مَّاءٍ مَّهِينٍ. Then this process was transferred to the next stage, where he started getting created through an ordinary drop of water, the way it's happening now. And then summa sawwahu. Then He improved him. He gave him finishing touches and gave him the ability to think, to reflect, and man is still ungrateful. You know what it's saying? That man got created over a very long period of time, God ensuring that he passes through different phases, where there was a phase of dust, of soil, and then later on it was a phase of the procreation that we know today, and thereafter He actually ensured that he gets the kind of finishing touches that we now humans are benefiting from, and then we became the agents who are going through the trial of this life. So the story that emerges on reading the Quran carefully is very different. I'm not saying that it is exactly the same story as is mentioned in the theory of evolution. God makes remarks, they are perfect, even though many of them in these cases are just indirect references, because it's not a book of science and that's not the immediate purpose.